I'm Katie Hauck. I am a pelvic health physiotherapist here in Kelowna, BC. But I lived in Ontario for many, many years as well, for anyone joining from Ontario. So happy to chat today about pregnancy and all the benefits of moving and staying active during pregnancy. I'm so happy to be here today with Hannah, as I love yoga as a tool for all stages of pregnancy, not just for our mood and energy levels, but also for preventing some common pregnancy discomforts. And when all things are going well, there's lots of tools we can put into our toolbox to prepare for smooth delivery. So touching base on kind of those two key things, some common discomforts that might pop up during pregnancy. So as our body and posture changes to adapt to a lot of the weight in the front, we tend to move to balance that posture out. A lot of that ends up being a kind of leaning backwards type of movement. So very often I'll see people coming in with back pain, hip pain, pelvic pain, or bladder leaks is also a sign of all the changes that can be happening in the body. There's a couple key muscles that go through the most changes during pregnancy that I wanted to touch on. And those are the deeper core muscles. So the ones, if you can guess it, pelvic floor is one of our big core muscles that we're talking about. There's an even more important muscle that I find, which is our diaphragm or breathing muscle. I find our breath or our breathing can be a really important strategy to focus on at any stage during pregnancy. So if we're looking at our core, I have a very tiny ball here to represent what our core looks like. We have our diaphragm, breathing muscle on top, pelvic floor on the bottom, and then there's a muscle that wraps around like a corset. So on the inside of this ball, there's going to be pressure. And as our body and muscles shift, that pressure can grow and add more weight on top. So when we have pressure, pressure has to go somewhere. It tends to find our weakest point. And that's where we start to see those signs of back pain and leaks creeping up with that. If that kind of makes sense so far. So what was I talking about? Common discomforts. So back pain, pelvic pain, bladder leaks. They are not inherently evil things, or every woman would have those type of symptoms during pregnancy. So there's lots of ways we can refine our core or tap into it to help stop these symptoms from starting in the first place. And a lot of that has to do with bringing that balance back with the posture. If everyone's kind of sitting down, relaxed right now, if you take a look at where your posture is at the moment, there's two big areas that we're looking at. One's the rib cage, one's the pelvis. So thinking of our rib cage first, where do you feel your rib cage sitting relative to your pelvis? Does it feel like your chest is flared up to the ceiling? Or is it kind of hanging back and down, balancing out that weight in the front? Every muscle, it has its best position that it's going to work in. So with our diaphragm, we want it to be sitting over top of the pelvis. Often with the growing baby weight in the front, our rib cage shifts back, and it's going to be hard to find or tap into that pelvic floor. This is where breathing can become very important, again, during the different stages of pregnancy. One breathing test that we can do, if you're wanting to follow along right now, starting with one hand on your chest, and if we go one hand on the belly, trying a nice relaxed breath in. Paying close attention to your hands seeing which hand do you feel moving first with that breath in. So, who feels their top hand moving? Yeah. Okay. I was a notoriously horrible shoulder breather. During pregnancy, we tend to move a lot to that shoulder neck breathing. If you get a lot of neck tension or headaches starting to creep up, this can be a common reason why. With the baby sitting low, our body finds its path of least resistance. So it's often easier to then start to breathe a little more shallow or breathe into our shoulders. Downfall of that is we don't connect to our core or our diaphragm. Who did feel the bottom hand moving with that breath in? So, some people. So we are looking for more of that lower down breath. One other challenge with the breath that we often see, especially in my more active, really strong people coming in, when we have a lot of tension in through the side of our core, we end up getting just the belly part moving, which is great. It's better than the breath going up into our shoulders, but we're missing the rest of our diaphragm when it's just the belly. What we're usually looking for with that breath is where we want the front, back, and sides of that rib cage to be expanding and opening up, almost like an opening umbrella. That's our sign that we're using the full diaphragm to get that nice release and pressure down. Some tricks I like to do to bring our brain into more the sides of our rib cage is you can try hands on the sides, or if you want to even give yourself a bit of a hug, wrapping your hands around the side and back of your ribs. If you try that same deep breath in, can you feel that breath going into your hands, expanding outwards on that inhale, and then coming back on the exhale? Who could feel the ribcage with that one? Great. Other tips and tricks that I like to add in, if you're really struggling to feel where your breath is going, I like to use exercise bands or TheraBands. A nice long one we can wrap around the ribcage. Not so tight that you're cutting off circulation, just to give a little bit of pressure all the way around. Breathing into that band, you want to feel it stretching on the breath in, kind of like an opening up umbrella. And these are a lot of breathing tips and tricks that we often go over during pregnancy. If you're not experiencing any of those typical pregnancy discomforts, physiotherapy can be a really amazing tool to help prep for the smooth delivery, as well as getting that jump start on recovery afterwards. So I often get asked, when's the best time to see a physiotherapist if you're looking for preparing for delivery? And often a great first visit is in the second trimester. This is a really great time to focus more on the strength piece. So how do we use the breath to connect to the rest of our core to make sure we're stabilizing everything to help with supporting the back and supporting the pelvis with the growing baby. And that's where Kegels then do actually start to come into play. So yeah, second trimester, great first prep stage. What I often find when I see people this early in pregnancy is you almost get a jump start on the recovery stage after delivery. So our pelvic floor muscles, they're deep on the inside. Before pregnancy, they are automatically doing their thing when we go to lift something heavy, when we cough, sneeze, jump on a trampoline. We don't have to consciously think about them. Because those muscles start to shift and move during pregnancy, we actually lose some of that automatic connection to the muscles. So this is a great stage to how do we reconnect to those muscles, find them, get the good cues that work well in your brain, so that then day one after delivery, you have all those tools in place to start rebuilding that connection again and really get back to what you enjoy doing, what you want to be doing at a bit faster and safer pace. A nice breathing connection that I find to add in our pelvic floor is imagining a jellyfish. So if anyone's ever seen a jellyfish move in an aquarium or out in the wild, if you can picture a jellyfish, it opens up as it moves down, and then it comes together as it moves up again. Our diaphragm and pelvic floor work together kind of like that jellyfish motion. As we breathe in and our diaphragm comes down, we get that pressure building in our abdomen, so that pelvic floor starts to relax and release its tension. As we breathe out, they both come back up together. So kind of up, down, like the jellyfish or a piston. If you want to even imagine your pelvic floor right now, looking at the pelvis, we have our front, our back. If I take all my organs out on the inside, we have a whole ton of muscles, which is the red here, that goes from the front, back, side to side, like a big hammock. So picturing that big hammock on the bottom, taking a deep breath in, can you imagine this hammock or jellyfish moving down, opening up? As you breathe out, imagine it coming back up and in. When we're keeping strong in the early stages of pregnancy, this is the type of breath we're looking for to connect to those muscles. We call it the blow before you go strategy. So before you're about to lift something heavy, can you breathe out, connect to that jellyfish, and get those muscles engaging during that motion? Rest of delivery prep is around the stage of 30 weeks all the way up to delivery. Now, up until that point, our focus is on connecting to those muscles, keeping that good coordination between strength, but also flexibility. From 30 weeks on, we're all about how we create as much space as possible in the pelvis so we have room for the baby. This is where a lot of the different yoga poses tend to come in, where I see a lot of benefits of people that have introduced yoga at this stage. And that's a lot to do with get that breathing technique, what's our mobility like in our hips, how's our back mobility, can we get that opening up space? I'll often touch base around 34 weeks and 37 weeks during this time. And that's when we're going over a lot more hands-on strategies to really give the muscles that chance to feel what's that stretching and lengthening like. If anyone's heard of perineal massage, this is one tool that you can put in your toolbox to basically give the muscles an awareness of, okay, we are going to be prepared for a very uncomfortable stretch. How do we get used to that sensation of stretch? And how can we add all those good breathing techniques to get that sensation and discomfort to melt away at the time? Along with kind of stretching, our breathing is also a good tool during labor as well. So breathing can be a very powerful tool around the 37-week mark to how do we change our pushing strategies. I know we chatted a bit before about movies where you see the woman screaming, really forcing, very high stress situation. Our pelvic floor muscles don't like stress. Our body's instinct when we're stressed out is we tense the pelvic floor muscles to try and protect us. But then that tension can create more pain and resistance when we're trying to get them in that open up state in the pelvis. The old school strategy you might see in a lot of movies is what we call closed glottis pushing. And that's basically where, if you imagine a really tough bowel movement, you're holding your breath, you're bearing down as hard as you can. Imagine if you're trying to do that now, what are those pelvic floor muscles doing? Are they relaxing against all that pressure and force, or can you feel them starting to tense? Almost like if you went into a yoga pose that was too deep of a stretch for you, our body's instinct is it wants to back away from that stretch. We're finding different ways to how do we actually melt into that stretch. And that's where breathing, we're finding that breathing with sound or open glottis breathing can be a much more relaxed way to get those muscles releasing with that breath in. And there's lots of different tools and things we can chat more about with that one. And it's a great one that you can go over with your physiotherapist in your area to have other options to add in. I know other questions I usually get asked are about birth positions, and we were chatting a little bit about this earlier. There's no real one great birth position for everyone. I often find the more tools we have going into delivery means we have more options at the time. And our body sort of learns while we're practicing things leading up to it that we can use in the moment. Almost like if you were going to do a half marathon race, we wouldn't wake up the day of having never run a day in our life. The training and prep beforehand tells our body that when we're in that race, when we're in that moment, we know how to put one foot in front of the other and keep going, and keep going, keep going. That being said, there's certain positions that tend to relax muscles and certain positions that tend to be a bit more of a tense position for muscles. So all that has to go back to anatomy if we're looking at the pelvis. So our pelvis could be in two different positions. We can be tailbone sticking out or arched back versus tailbone tucked under or flat back. With pregnancy, our posture tends to bring us into one extreme or the other. Usually with the growing weight in the front, we tend to arch our back quite a bit, which can put a bit more strain on the back. It can also put the pelvic floor muscles in a very tense, uncomfortable position. If we are experiencing a lot of back pain, or if you're someone that tends to have very tight hamstrings, we could also naturally want to be a very tucked under position. This also can put those muscles in sort of a short, tight, not as functional position as well. There's usually going to be that happy medium in between the two, where a muscle is working at its best. So if we think of something like our bicep muscle, we can be fully extended arm, fully bent arm. We tend to be strongest when we're halfway in the middle, rather than if I'm holding a coffee cup way out here. When it comes to finding a great position for a pelvis during delivery, early stages of labor, we're looking to open up the top part of our pelvis. That's going to let the baby's head start to move down into the pelvis and engage for delivery. That goes with a lot of our tucked under positions. So if we think of the dancing, back and forth, movements, gravity are all great things that are going to help bring the baby down. When it comes time for the delivery itself, we want the opposite. We're looking to get as much space as possible in the bottom of the pelvis, where you can see there's all these different muscles coming together. So these muscles are ones that if we've never given birth before, they're not used to stretching, opening out. And that's a lot of the tools and strategies that we're adding in at that 34, 35-week mark. These muscles are also going to open up and lengthen when we're tailbone sticking out. That can be a lot of positions that we were chatting about earlier, like the gravity positions of the squat, the hands and knees, the leaning over. Anything that frees up that tailbone and opens it up can be an option to add in. Our classic movie position that we often see is the lying on the back with someone holding the legs. In that position, our tailbone does tuck under. It can be a little bit more of a challenging position. That being said, if you're practicing a lot of great breathing strategies throughout the pregnancy, practicing in positions you think you might end up for birth as well can be a great tool to connect your breath to those muscles. See if you can feel that relaxing and lengthening in those positions. Thank you for listening to me ramble on.
I just wanted to say something, Katie. Can you hear me?
Okay.
Yeah, I just wanted to say when because a lot of people end up pushing on their backs, in the end, and that's how we see women usually birth. They're all on their backs, they're all pushing like that. Like, let's say you have to labor on your back, and you have that smaller opening, and your pelvic floor muscles might not find it as easy to relax. I love that you said practice already being on your back and connecting with that. That's a great tip for everyone who's here. Is just when we do our pelvic floor exercises today, I'm going to be doing it in different yoga poses. Most likely you're not going to be giving birth in that pose. So I want you to try laying on your back and like you're in your labor and delivery bed, and do what Katie said. Soft, like think of that jellyfish. Inhale, relax your pelvic floor muscles, and exhale, draw them in and up. So to just that soft connection, just so you can connect with it. And that's going to be today's yoga class after. Is our theme is connection, because we want, so many women are disconnected with their bodies. Like their brains in birth are going so many directions, and what they're doing is they're not like sinking into the body, sinking into the experience, and connecting from the head to the heart to baby, the baby to your pelvic floor. It's this, and that's why breath and yoga is so good, because we sink into the body. So I want you to think of that. Just keep practicing that, whether you're in your first trimester or baby's coming soon. Practice poses around the house where you think you could be laboring in, and see, in this position, can I still soften and relax my pelvic floor? And I was going to show you guys later in my course, I have a whole section of different sounds you can make. You know how Katie was talking about sounds? It's really helpful to release a low or a soft sound instead of a scream. Because when you scream and yell, it's a high-pitched sound. It's not helpful for the body. But low sounds can really help relax. So maybe we'll practice a little bit of that today. But that's just side. But keep going, Katie. You're going great. If anyone else has something coming up, please put it in the chat.
Yeah, I love those 2 points that you touched on. So they did a lot of great research on sound and how our voice actually connects to our diaphragm, which connects to the pelvic floor. So high-pitched sounds actually creates this tightening in our pelvic floor, where they found low-pitched sounds creates more of a relaxing, lengthening. So yeah, I love that you mentioned that piece. And yeah, giving birth on our back, it's definitely not the be-all, end-all. I often will practice a lot of techniques lying on the back, as that does seem to be a common position that we might end up in if we have a very strong epidural and we're a bit more limited in positions that we can be in. Or just our energy fatigue, lying might be our good option to go to. Breathing. It's never too early or too late in the pregnancy to really add in those strategies to start connecting our brain to those muscles. It's really all about what's working for you to find those muscles and see, are they in that relaxed state? Is this a nice position for me? Or maybe this one's not so great for me. I'm feeling the muscles are actually starting to tense when I'm in this position. We do even have, kind of building off of that, some newer research that has opened up even more position options. And they're actually starting to look at our hip position. So our hips, we can be rotated out, kind of like the way I'm sitting right now. which tend to be more of a classic position when we're lying on our back. You usually see someone holding both legs out to the side. And they're finding that it actually was starting to narrow that lower part of the pelvis, where when we have our feet out, knees turned in, this can actually open up the pelvis by an extra, I think it's like 4 to 6 millimeters, and give you that little bit more space. So I often see a lot of birth positions lying on your side, where you can kind of play around with the position of what your leg is in, seeing with your breathing, can you feel those muscles drop down like that jellyfish when our legs are apart? Or can you feel it better if your feet are apart, knees together? And just kind of really open up more options. My dog today.
Needs some love. So as we slowly wrap up, is there any last kind of things you wanted to mention about labor prep, as a lot of people in this group are giving birth very soon? Is there any last things you wanted to touch on, or yeah, maybe or going into, are we still really focused on connecting with the core at the end of pregnancy? Is it kind of like a full out wanting to connect the whole time?
Yeah, great question. So we connection to the core is important at all stages of pregnancy. Our focus on connecting to the core for strength is usually more second trimester, all the way up into about 30 weeks.
And
Once
that's
we
for
30 weeks,
that's for postpartum recovery. Sorry, right? Like we want
oh,
to.
sorry, yeah.
So why do we want to connect to the core in pregnancy? Is it just because we will have all these benefits plus a better postpartum recovery period? Is that like the main reasons?
Yeah, so typically in the earlier stages, we do need a bit of core strength during the actual labor as well, but we want that strength on a relaxed pelvic floor. Otherwise, through the most of the pregnancy, they're finding much better recovery when we are staying active and we have that good connection to our core muscles. We're able to better find them afterwards to kind of get that jump start on the recovery piece as well. Certain pains and symptoms we get during pregnancy, like the bladder leaks or back pain, that can also be connected to not having a good connection to the core. So even just trying to feel comfortable throughout your pregnancy and not having to suffer with some of these common discomforts that we might feel, it can be really beneficial to have that connection into our core.
Great.
Yeah, mostly I find from a delivery prep piece, the 30 weeks on is when we're really switching our focus to the how do we do connect, but in a way where we're releasing tension, creating as much space as possible, feeling that sensation of when we are in discomfort or things are stretched, how do we get that tension to melt and open up?
Perfect. Is there any last comments you want to say before I stop the recording and we get to question and answer?
I think it's so mainly balance between strength and flexibility is important through all stages of pregnancy. Really, you're using your breath, you're listening to your body. Pelvic floor physio can be a good tool at any stage, whether you're experiencing symptoms that you want to mitigate or you're thinking ahead, being proactive, and just want some tools in your toolbox to help with a smooth delivery.
Perfect.